Yes. You're like, where the fuck are you? I'm behind the camera because we're gonna hold the damn camera because we're gonna talk about this. Okay? We're gonna talk about this. You're gonna learn about that in months, but we're gonna talk about this. You're like, in months? Shut the fuck up. This book, I've tried to do this review 4 times now, and I can't get the words out. So I'm just gonna be really blunt and really fucking honest. Because I keep trying to say what I want to say, but I keep burying it and not saying it because I don't want to offend people. Well, you know what? F that shit. Would I recommend buying this book if you are a witch who's gone through a transition? No, I wouldn't. Because it doesn't help you understand your tradition. It doesn't help you understand your transition at all. There's nothing in this book that physically helps you understand why the spirits have stopped talking to you, why your entities have left, why your life is falling apart, how to get back on track. It comes across as a Scott Cunningham book, okay, dressed up in Lunar Wisdom's words and her definitions and practices of her magic. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. This book I would recommend to new witches. Okay. I would recommend this to new witches as opposed to established witches because the information in this book is super, super basic because we are getting back to basics. But I feel like an established witch, a witch who had a craft of some kind, a witch who knew the basics and fundamentals should easily be able to just jump back in with the guidance of their spirits, right? As witch, you can never, ever, she fucking says it right here, okay? A witch isn't something that an individual can separate from her or himself because it is the self. So you should always have an inclination of the basics. My problem with this book is that it's not really helping you reestablish your craft in any way. It's just it's basically regurgitating what other books have said, but in Lunar Wisdom's own opinions, thoughts, and so on and so forth. And if you're a fan of Lunar Wisdom, then you'll definitely want to buy this book. That's another reason why I would suggest this book for new witches, because it's not Wiccan-based. Every book out there that you find for new witches is always Wiccan-based. And while, yes, I do state, okay, if you are a new witch, you should go down the Wiccan path because you will learn the basics of being a witch. But I feel like this book can also help you with that. It has exercises in it, okay? Like here's one about a candle flame. And she walks you through what she wants you to do, and then you'll probably, and there's another exercise about an energy ball and manifesting your, you know, and there's an energy ball revisited. Now, you'll probably want to have, right, and then she's got questions at the end of these, right? So you'll probably want to have like a journal when you buy this book to go through. And if you are a new witch, this is a book that's good for you because the exercises in here will help you kind of cement and understand, okay, what is it that I'm doing? And again, it's not Wiccan based, so it's a good book for new witches. As for, if I was going through this situation again, if I was going through a transition, okay, let's say, and what is a transition in your craft? Because you might not know what a transition is. A transition is anything that happens in your craft where it changes, and it doesn't change overnight, so don't fuck with me, motherfucker. Transitions take months, if not years. Mine, I was blessed, only lasted me a couple of months, okay? It's just months, okay? It's a hard thing to go through, and every witch's transitional period will be unique to themselves, okay? Now, when I talk about a transition, here's an example. When I used to work with the saints, okay, I had found that the saints were very much the type of entities that would only help you if you were basically at death's door. Not literally, but you know what I mean. So when I was working for a job where they weren't paying me on time all the time, I would work with the saints, but the saints would only help me if rent was due, say, for example, the next day and I didn't have any money. That's where I went back to working with the spirits, and the saints basically said, hey, we're not going to work with you if you're going to work with the spirits. It's either us or them. And so it went through months of quietness and silence as the saints had left and the spirits had come back and started to, you know, be more part of my life. But it was very quiet. It was there was nothing to do. There was no magic. There was nothing. Okay. And a transition time can be anything. Okay. We could be, and she does talk about this in this book. One of the examples, I think it was that we might cast spells for 6 months of the year, and then the other 6 months of the year, maybe we're going for walks and reflecting and learning and growing internally, right? Like, just because we're not always sitting at the altar with a candle flame going doesn't mean we're not witch. In terms of you personally going through a transition, like when I was going through that transition, if Lunar Wisdom came up with this book during then and was like, hey, Adam, I think you should read this book. I think it'll help you get back to your craft. It'll give me an understanding of the basics of my craft again, absolutely. But I didn't really get a sense or a feeling of what is a transition, right? Like, I feel like if this book was directed to those people, then this should have had more chapters, at least a few more at the beginning to, you know, talk about what is a transition and how do we go through transitions, and maybe an example of her own transition, which I believe she gave somewhere in this book. I can't remember. But, you know, giving examples and talking about transitions. Like, if I'm a witch, okay, if I am a witch who is seeking to reestablish my practice, what I want to know is I want to understand the transition. I want to understand the quiet times. I want to understand what a witch's transition is. Why do we go through them? And does every witch go through them? Did Lunar Wisdom go through one? I mean, yeah, she did. But, you know, like, these are the things that I was hoping to get out of this book, to understand more about those transitions that we go through, because some witches will go through 5 transitions in a year and some will go through 5 in 100 years, right? Like, we don't go through transitions at the same time. We don't all have the same kind of transition, and a transition can be anything. It could be you leaving the Wiccan path and becoming a traditional witch. It could be you stop working with the Morrigan and start working with Ashtaroth. It could be you stop being a witch and become a Christian, right? Like, but there was nothing in here about transitions, how they affect people's crafts or anything like that. So I didn't get the information I was seeking. Okay, and if you're seeking that kind of information to understand, this book isn't for you. Okay, I don't think there is a book out there for you. If you are looking to get back to the basics, I mean, this book's not bad. It's good for that, but I mean, you'll find the same information in other books. The only difference between this book and those books is that this is not a Wiccan book. Okay, a lot of books I buy from Chapters, Amazon, so on and so forth, and they're Wiccan based. Okay, this is not that. This is the first book that I own, aside from a couple hoodoo books, where it's not about Wicca. It doesn't talk about Wicca, but it does kind of treat you like you're stupid. I mean, it's back to basics, right? Like, it's kind of making the assumption that you forgot how to practice witchcraft. But again, that makes me question Lunar Wisdom's intention with this book, because if you are a witch, right, it says right here, witch isn't something that an individual can separate from him or herself. But it also states that is a book for witches who are seeking to reestablish their witchcraft practice. I don't think, based off this definition, that you should ever lose your practice, because she also states in here, with an example of some guy named Bear or something, that, you know, he might be practicing for 6 months of the year and then he might be off doing whatever for 6 months of the year, but he is still witch and he is still in some form or way another practicing his craft. Just because he ain't physically at the altar doesn't mean he's not, you know, still practicing his craft. So that leads me to question, like, who is this book really for? Because it comes across as for new witches. Okay, it has nothing in here to do about transitions or exploring your like trying to understand why your craft transitioned. That's what I was hoping to get from this book, and I did not get that. What I got from this book was basic understanding of non-Wiccan based witchcraft, which could still technically be applied to Wicca or any other path of witchcraft in general, okay? Now, would I buy this book? If Lunar Wisdom was not gracious enough to give me this book, would I have gone out and bought it? No. No, I would not. Because I have enough books that are basic, okay? I have enough books that teach me the basics of witchcraft. Again, I do like that this book is not Wiccan based and that it has some of Lunar Wisdom's own experiences and opinions in here, but I didn't get the information that I was hoping to get from this book. I was hoping that this book would somehow kind of explain what transitions are and why we go through them and whatnot. And maybe I didn't read it clearly enough. But the impression that I got from this book was that it was very basic. Hello, there's the word. And very, I don't know. Like if you're a new witch, this is a book for you. Literally. It's got exercises in here. Exercises that are easy for you to do. Defining yourself, picking a journal. Now, if you're looking for information on Book of Shadows or different herbs or potions or what a correspondence is, I mean, she does have the definition of correspondence in here. But this book is making an assumption that you have some basic understanding of witchcraft and its practices, and you just want to get back to, oh yeah, that's how that works. I remember now. Okay. However, I feel like if you read a Scott Cunningham book and then came and read this book, you would be able to understand this book and follow along in the exercises and try some of the things in the exercises. And again, it won't be Wiccan based. Okay. This is not a Wiccan book. Okay, this is very general. It's not traditional witchcraft. It's not Abrahamic witchcraft. It's not Wicca. It's not Bicca. It's not hippy dippy. Okay, this book is good for new witches because of the exercises and the content, as long as you have the context. But if you're a witch who's gone through a transition, if you're a witch who's gone through some major life change and maybe it's been 5 years and you haven't practiced, I mean, at that point, you'd still have witchcraft books, wouldn't you? Unless you're throwing them all out. I didn't get what I wanted from this book, so I don't feel like it's a book for established witches. I feel like, okay, so there's two reasons you're gonna buy this book. One is if you've hit your head and forgot everything about witchcraft, but you kind of know witchcraft, right? Like you know how to light a candle, you know how to light incense, you kind of know what intentions are, right? This is kind of for you. Like you sort of know what you're doing, but you just need a refresher. If you're a new witch, I would read a book before this one, like the Scott Cunningham Living Wicca, and then I would read this book afterwards and do the exercises in here because it's going to give you more of an understanding of magic and how we can shape our own morals and how we can walk our own path. And it's more witchcraft than it is Wicca Bicca, okay? But if I go backwards to the time that I was going through my transition and I had no idea what the hell was going on and I was terrified and scared and thought that I wasn't even a real witch anymore and that I was never a real witch, if she had released this book and was like, hey, I think this book would be good for you, would I buy it? No. It doesn't help me understand my transition. It helps me get back to the basics of the craft. It doesn't help me understand how I got to the point where I am in my life. Like, right, if you've gone through a life transition, let's say your mother died and you gave up on the craft for 5 years, right? Like, that's one thing. That's one thing. This book would be good for you, okay? But if you're somebody like me, who for 3 months was bitching and complaining on YouTube that I had no idea what was going on in my craft and I had no idea why the spirits had stopped talking to me and why everybody was leaving me and how everything felt empty and blank and meaningless and was I even a witch and am I even a witch? You remember that video? Motherfucker, I know you remember that video. Then I would not buy this book because it's not going to help me, okay? It's not going to help me understand what the fuck is going on. And I don't think any book really could. Okay, this book is just going to help me get back to the basics of my craft. It's not going to help me understand my transition. I feel like some chapters on shadow work would have helped with that, especially around the transition aspect, and maybe defining what shadow work is and how to use shadow. Like, there was nothing in here on shadow work. I definitely thought Lunar Wisdom would have put something in here on shadow work, but no. And there's nothing really about a transition. This is more of a book after you've gone through it. This is a book after you've gone through your transition or after you've been away from the craft for 15 years. Okay, this is not a book that if you're currently going through a transition. Okay, there was a certain individual that I suggested Lunar Wisdom should give this book to. I won't say who, because it's 2021 and we're moving on from that goddamn drama. Okay, people. But after going through this book, I don't think that person would have gained anything to help them understand their craft or why they're going through the situations that they are, right? Like, this is a book for after the fact, not during, okay? Now, one last time. Would I buy this book today? I have enough books that are basic, so... And again, it didn't really help me understand the transition phase, so no. If I was a new witch who was just starting the craft and I read the Scott Cunningham book and I'm looking for more knowledge on witchcraft, would I buy this book? Yes, because it has basics and it doesn't come at it from a Wicca perspective. It comes at it from a witchcraft perspective. If I'm a witch who has not practiced in 15 years and I sort of remember what witchcraft is and I kind of remember how to do things and I've been flipping through my Book of Shadows and I'm trying to remember what correspondences are, would I buy this book? Maybe. It depends upon your craft. This book would help, but at the same time, you're kind of already a quote-unquote established witch. You're just getting back into the swing of things. So, I mean, that's subjective to you. That's personal opinion to you, whether you want to buy this book or another book, because any book that you can buy at Chapters or Indigo or whatever your local bookstore is, that's going to be Wiccan based is going to have the same information in here. Is this a bad book? No, it's not. It has good information in it, right? And Lunar Wisdom knows what the hell she's talking about. But I feel like it didn't give me some of the things that I was hoping to get out of it, right? Like, I'm still looking for a book that will talk about shadow work in depth and, like, what it really is, because I think I have a completely screwed up misinterpretation of shadow work. And I feel like this is the perfect book that shadow work should have been in. I also feel like you can skip the first chapter, Words Hold Power, because it's really just about labels and, like, defining your craft and defining and using words to define who you are as a witch, right? I didn't get anything out of the first chapter. The rest of it is where the book gets good, and what you'll want to read and pay attention to. But again, I didn't get some of the answers I was hoping to get out of this book. But I do recommend it to new witches, and I do recommend it to people who want to kind of explore Lunar Wisdom's interpretation of what the basics are and you know, getting back into your craft. But I didn't get that feeling from this book. The feeling that I got was, here's some information, here's some personal opinions, and good luck. Oh, and here's some exercises. What I was really hoping that I would have gotten out of this book is, here's what it means for a transition, and here's an example of a transition that I went through, and here's how you might do shadow work around that, and here's how I reached out to new spirits and entities, right? Like, we all know, even if you don't practice witchcraft for 5 years, you're still going to come back and know that, you know, okay, a white candle, this is good for blessing, okay, and we got what else? We got green candle in there, that's good for money, right? Like, we got the basics. Those are the basics. Like, even if all you have an orange candle and you need to do a money spell, you should know as a witch, even if you've been practicing for 5 years, that you could use an orange candle, right? I also feel like with a lot of the information in here, a lot of witches who are returning to their craft are probably going to go to YouTube or Facebook groups. The information in here for witches who have been practicing their craft for, like, say 10 years and then took 5 years off for whatever reason, it's not going to be helpful to them. This is more going to be helpful towards people who are curious about Lunar Wisdom's, you know, writing and what she has to say on the subject. It's also really good for new witches who have at least read one book before. Even if you haven't read a book before, this is still a good book. It does make the assumption, right? Like, she does talk about transitioning in the introduction, right? And she does talk about transitioning throughout the book, but it's not It's not the information I was hoping to gain from it. Again, that does not make this a bad book. It just doesn't, and it doesn't come off as a book for experienced witches. It comes off as a book for, I would say, new witches and witches who have practiced for maybe a year. This would be a good book for them, right? Especially if you're looking to go down a different craft, like a different path for your craft. Like, let's say you're a Wiccan and you want to be traditional witch, or you want to understand general witchcraft without the stupid labels applied to it, right? Like Wicca or traditional or ceremonial or whatever. You just want to practice witchcraft. This is not an introduction book. This assumes you've got some basic knowledge, okay? But that's all it assumes, is very basic knowledge, because she'll walk you through the rest. The only thing she doesn't walk you through is what a Book of Shadows is or a grimoire. But that's up to you to figure out, right? And there's books on that, right? Again, I didn't get the information that I was hoping to get out of this book in relation to transitions and going through my own personal transition and trying to understand that, along with subjects on shadow work and stuff like that. It just came across as, we all go through transitions, we all go through hard times in life, here's the basics of witchcraft, here's a few exercises, here you go, bye. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's so much more that I'm leaving out, right? Like, that's a very simplistic, boiled down version of this book. So, you know, I would buy it. I would not buy it today, but if I'm telling you, I would say go out and buy it, at least for the information that's in it. Even if you never, like, use it, like, even if you never do the exercises in it, or if you know what meditation is, or if you know what altered states are, or if you know what a familiar and unfamiliar spirits are, I would almost suggest to go out and buy it just to add it to your arsenal, right? I would have probably ended up buying this book at some point to add to my arsenal. I just wouldn't have bought it right now, because after going through it, right, like, I didn't get what I was hoping to get out of it. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, very basic, good for new witches, good for witches who have at least a year of experience under their belt. Witches who have more than 5 years under their belt and have taken a couple years off, maybe. Witches who have 10 years under their belt and have taken 5 years off, probably not. Because, I mean, you basically, you know witchcraft at that point. You have a relationship. Your spirits will come to you and tell you, you know. But if you're somebody who's looking to understand the transition, if you're looking to understand the things that are happening in your craft right now that are making you feel maybe depressed or miserable or like you're not a real witch, this book ain't gonna help you. Okay, this book definitely ain't gonna help you. And that's all I have to say on it. God, this video is so long. It's a good book, okay? Don't get me wrong, it's a good book. It's just, it didn't give me the answers I was looking for, and it's not for me because I have enough basic books. Am I gonna keep this book? Absolutely. Because you never know. You never know when something in here is going to apply to your craft in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I love to collect books on witchcraft, because you never know, okay? So even if you don't have any intentions of reading this book, go out and buy it to at least support Lunar Wisdom, because she put a lot of work into this, okay? You can buy it on Amazon for $12.99. This book is called Becoming Witch Back to Basics. I would buy it to support Lunar Wisdom. I would not buy it to learn anything from it, because as I've already stated, I haven't learned anything that I didn't already know from it, except for the element and elementals part, and the pyramid, the witch's pyramid, right? There's a few things in here that I learned that I didn't know, but again, what I was hoping to get out of it, I did not learn from it, okay? I did not learn how or what my transition is about, or how to deal with those transition periods or anything like that, or like how I could use shadow work to process that. Like, I didn't get that, okay? And I was really hoping to. Kind of disappointing. Anywho, so again, new witches, up to a year of practicing, buy this book, okay? It's gonna help you. It's gonna help you so damn much. Witches after that, I mean, it's up to you. It's really up to you, okay? Like I said, would not buy this book, because after reading it, that's really hard to say. Like, I've read the book, so how would I know if I would buy it or not, right? Like, I've read the book, and it just doesn't jive with me. I did learn some things, but it doesn't work for me, okay? It didn't give me the info that I wanted. No shade, no tea against Lunar Wisdom, okay? Anywho, go out and buy this book. You're like, you wouldn't buy this book, but you telling us to buy this book. Yes, because I think a lot of you on my channel need this book. I think a lot of you have an understanding of what witchcraft is, but I don't think you know the basics. I'm sorry, I'm coughing, I'm dying. And that's not all of you. I think that's just some of you, okay? And I think this book would be helpful in helping you understand the basics from a witchcraft perspective and not a Wiccan perspective, okay? That's where this book shines. Anyways, let me know what you think. Let me know if you've bought this book. Let me know if you've read this book. I want your opinions. I want your comments in the comment section. I want your video responses. I want everything. I want to know personally from you what you thought of Lunar Wisdom's book. Okay? Love you.